The story begins in the pre-dawn hours of March 17, 2007, as 32-year-old Carlos Eduardo Ferreira and his wife, 28-year-old Márcia Oliveira Ferreira, ended their night shift at the Itapevi Municipal Hospital in the greater São Paulo area. The couple were dedicated healthcare workers. He was a nursing technician and she, an administrative assistant. On that Saturday night turning into Sunday morning, a fine drizzle fell from a partly cloudy sky, casting a gray pall over the city and reducing visibility on the roads. At 5:43 a.m., the hospital's security cameras recorded the couple walking together through the rear parking lot. Carlos wore his white coat over a light blue shirt and jeans, while Marcia was in her hospital uniform of a white blouse and black pants. They climbed into their silver 2004 Fiat Palio weekend license plate DJK7845. The car pulled out of the lot at 5:47 a.m., turning right onto Presidente Vargas Avenue. This was the start of their usual route home, heading toward the Castelo Branco highway, which would take them to their neighborhood in Barueri, a neighboring city about 15 kilometers away. The drive, which should have taken no more than 25 minutes in the light early morning traffic, was a journey they would never complete. Somewhere along that familiar route, Carlos and Marcia simply vanished. Neither the couple nor their vehicle were seen again that morning. Later that day at 2:38 p.m., Carlos's sister, Rosana Ferreira, grew concerned. Her brother had promised to join her for lunch at 1, but he never arrived. She tried calling him, but the calls went straight to voicemail. She then called Marcia, with the same result. After several more failed attempts, Rosana drove to the couple's house. Arriving around 3:20 p.m., she found everything in order, but with no sign of them. The bed was made, indicating they hadn't returned from work. The previous day's coffee cups were still in the sink. In the yard, their German shepherd, Tarek, was visibly agitated. As Rosana would later tell the police, it was as if they had left for work and never come back. By 7:23 p.m. that Sunday, after checking with friends and other relatives, Rosana went to the Barueri police station to report them missing. The officer on duty, Delegate Alberto Pimentel, initially suggested waiting 24 hours as it wasn't uncommon for adults to be temporarily out of touch. But Rosana insisted. The couple had never disappeared before, never missed work without notice, and so a missing persons report, case number 1738-2007, was filed that night. There was no apparent reason for them to have left voluntarily. Carlos and Marcia had been married for 5 years, had no children, and by all accounts, shared a stable and harmonious relationship. Financially, they were secure. They had both worked at the hospital for over 4 years, had recently paid off their home mortgage, and were planning a vacation. There were no records of significant debt or any trouble that might motivate them to flee. The first 72 hours are considered crucial in solving such cases. The formal investigation began on the morning of March 19th, when Delegate Pimentel assigned investigators Marcelo Ribeiro and Denise Campos to the case. Their first step was to review the hospital's security footage, which confirmed the couple's departure time. Next, they traced their route. The Castelo Branco highway, the main artery between the two cities, was monitored by traffic cameras. The footage showed the Fiat Palio entering the highway at 5:53 a.m., but there was no record of it exiting at any of the ramps near their destination. As investigator Ribeiro noted in his first report, it was as if they had driven onto the highway and disappeared into thin air. The car was not seen exiting at any subsequent ramp leading towards São Paulo either. Searches were conducted in the wooded areas and along the shoulders of the highway, but sniffer dogs found no trace of the car or the couple. The initial theory of a car accident seemed unlikely, with no skid marks, crash debris, or witness reports. On the third day, the couple's cell phones were tracked. Carlos's phone last pinged a tower near the highway entrance at 5:52 a.m., consistent with the camera footage. Marcia's phone sent its final signal at 5:54 a.m. from the same area. After that, both devices went silent forever. Their bank accounts and credit cards remained untouched. Interviews with 27 colleagues painted a picture of a quiet, hard-working couple with no known enemies. But 3 weeks into the investigation, a potential lead emerged. A hospital security guard, Clayton Souza, told police he had witnessed an argument between Carlos and an unidentified man in the parking lot about a week before the disappearance. According to Clayton, the man, described as tall, bald, with a tribal tattoo on his right forearm, had said something like, "You know this can't go on," before quickly walking away. This opened a new line of inquiry. Was Carlos involved in something illicit? Was he being threatened? But no one in their close circle recognized the description, and all vehemently denied that Carlos would be involved in anything illegal. The investigation gained new momentum on April 12, 2007. A farmer found a white coat bearing the Itapevi Municipal Hospital logo on the bank of a rural road that branched off the Castelo Branco highway. In the pocket was Carlos's ID badge. Forensic analysis found no blood, only traces of mud and local vegetation. The coat's location suggests they may have been forced off the highway onto this side road, theorized investigator Campos. The area was sparsely populated, a mix of farms, dense woods, and artificial lakes. A massive search operation was launched, involving police, firefighters, and volunteers. For 3 days, they scoured a 5-kilometer radius using drones and helicopters. Yet they found nothing. As months turned into years, the case grew cold. Dozens of reported sightings from across the country were all investigated and dismissed. A pair of con artists even tried to extort money from the family, claiming to have information, but they were swiftly caught. In February 2008, an anonymous tip suggested the couple had been kidnapped and killed in a case of mistaken identity, confused for another couple involved in diverting medicine. But the tip offered no concrete evidence. After 18 months, the case was reclassified as unsolved, a bureaucratic term for a file left open only in the hope that new information might one day surface. Rosanna, however, never stopped searching for answers. She ran a social media page dedicated to the case and gave interviews whenever possible, refusing to let her brother and sister-in-law be forgotten. Then, in 2012, 5 years after the disappearance, a new witness came forward. Adelson Correa, a former maintenance worker from the hospital, was arrested on drug trafficking charges. Hoping for a lighter sentence, he claimed to have information about the missing couple. He told police he'd seen Carlos find a suspicious package in a maintenance locker weeks before he vanished. The package, he said, contained controlled medications being stolen by a network of hospital employees. According to Adelson, Carlos had confronted the head of maintenance, a man named Gilberto Menezes. Days later, Adelson claimed he overheard Gilberto telling another man that the meddling nurse needed to be silenced. Police pursued this lead vigorously but hit significant roadblocks. Gilberto Menezes had died in a motorcycle accident in 2010, and the hospital's pharmacy records for that period had been destroyed in a flood in 2009. Though investigators found a few former employees who confirmed rumors of a theft ring, no one could corroborate Adelson's specific story. The lead eventually dissolved for lack of material evidence. The case took another stunning turn in July 2015. While expanding a farm in the same rural area where Carlos's coat was found, workers draining a swampy patch of land hit a large metal object, submerged in the mud. It was a vehicle completely overgrown with vegetation and caked in sediment. Police were called, and after a difficult extraction, they confirmed it was a silver Fiat Palio Weekend. The license plate read DJK 7845. It was Carlos and Marcia's car. The vehicle was found in an area known as Duck Lagoon, a natural depression that collected rainwater, located just 800 meters from where the coat had been discovered years earlier. Its hood was crumpled and the windshield shattered. Inside, they found the couple's personal documents. In the trunk was a suitcase packed for a short trip and a laptop, severely damaged by water. Most disturbingly, there were no bodies inside or anywhere near the car. The new lead investigator, Ricardo Mendez, theorized the couple had either managed to escape the vehicle and wander off, or their bodies had been removed. The damaged laptop was sent to a specialist who managed to partially recover its data. Among the files was a folder titled Irregularities. It contained photos of medicine boxes and screenshots of emails between hospital staff. A text document dated March 16, 2007, the day before they disappeared, contained notes on values, dates, and names, all seemingly related to a drug diversion scheme. This discovery reignited the investigation, giving powerful credence to the theory that their disappearance was tied to a crime they had uncovered. The final heartbreaking breakthrough came in more than a decade after the mystery began. In March, workers performing routine maintenance on a water reservoir on an abandoned property, just 3 kilometers from where the car was found, made a macabre discovery. At the bottom of a deep, water-filled pit, they found human remains. After the pit was drained, investigators recovered the nearly complete skeleton of an adult. Alongside the bones lay fragments of a hospital uniform, a men's wristwatch, and a gold wedding band. The ring was inscribed with M and C 2002, the year Marcia and Carlos were married. DNA samples compared against those provided by Rosana confirmed the remains belonged to Carlos Eduardo Ferreira. The cause of death couldn't be determined with certainty, but forensics identified a fracture in the skull consistent with a blunt force impact. "It's a tragic confirmation," Rosana told the press, "but it brings some sense of closure after so many years of uncertainty. Now we know my brother was the victim of a crime." The investigation had new life and a new, urgent focus. If Carlos had been found, where was Marcia? The search was expanded, covering a wider radius around the abandoned property. For weeks, drones equipped with thermal and infrared cameras scanned the region from above. Specially trained cadaver dogs swept the area time and time again. Then on June 17, 2018, during one of these intensive sweeps, investigators made a grim discovery. About 200 yards from the first grave, they found a second one, smaller and shallower. Inside were human remains. DNA analysis soon confirmed they belonged to Marcia Oliveira Ferreira. The state of her remains was similar to that of Carlos, suggesting they had been killed around the same time. The police were now certain they were dealing with a double homicide, one that was premeditated and meticulously concealed. The positioning of the bodies in separate graves, the significant distance from their vehicle, and the clear attempt to hide the crime all pointed to a planned operation, not a crime of opportunity or a tragic accident. Evidence recovered from Carlos's laptop, combined with years of witness statements and the circumstances of their deaths, led investigators to a chilling conclusion. The couple had been murdered to stop them from exposing a drug diversion scheme at the Itapevi Municipal Hospital. The material found on the computer indicates Carlos was gathering evidence about the scheme and intended to file a formal complaint, explained Chief Detective Ricardo Mendez at a press conference. "We believe he and his wife were ambushed on their way home after finishing their shift in the early hours of that morning." Based on this new evidence, the police identified 3 main suspects. Fernando Gomez, the hospital's former administrative director; Paulo Roberto Silva, the former head of the stockroom; and Julio Cesar Mendonça, a driver who worked for Fernando. Julio also matched the physical description provided by the security guard, who had witnessed the argument with Carlos weeks before his disappearance. In August 2018, after months of painstaking investigation, the police secured arrest warrants for all three men. Fernando and Paulo were located and taken into custody. Julio, however, was gone. Federal police records showed he had left the country in 2014, bound for Paraguay. An international alert was issued for his capture. During interrogations, Paulo Roberto eventually confessed to his role in the crime in exchange for a plea bargain. According to his testimony, Carlos had uncovered the scheme, which involved diverting controlled medications, especially opioids and psychotropics, to be sold on the black market for a massive profit. Carlos had been gathering proof for weeks, Paulo confessed. He had installed a hidden camera in the stockroom and recorded conversations. The night before they vanished, Carlos confronted Fernando, threatening to take everything to the federal police that coming Monday. According to the testimony, Fernando ordered Julio to solve the problem. In the early hours of October 17th, as the couple left the hospital, Julio followed them in another vehicle. On the highway, he pulled up alongside their car and, pretending to be a police officer, signaled for them to pull over. When Carlos slowed down, Julio forced their car off the road, sending it crashing into a ditch. Carlos and Márcia survived the initial crash but were quickly overpowered by Julio. He forced them to drive down a series of back roads to the abandoned property. There, according to the confession, the couple was murdered and their bodies were buried in separate graves. The vehicle was then taken to another location and sunk in the lagoon to make it nearly impossible to find. It was supposed to be a complete disappearance, Paulo stated during the trial. Fernando was sure they would never find anything. The trial of Fernando Gomez and Paulo Roberto Silva took place in March 2019. Both were convicted of double homicide with aggravating circumstances, concealment of a corpse, and criminal conspiracy. Fernando received a sentence of 42 years in prison, while Paulo, benefiting from his plea deal, was sentenced to 28 years. Julio Cesar Mendonça remained a fugitive until January 2020, when he was located and arrested by Interpol in Ciudad del Este, Paraguay. Extradited back to Brazil, he was tried separately and sentenced to 38 years in prison for carrying out the murders. The investigation into the drug diversion scheme at Itapevi Municipal Hospital, triggered by the discoveries in the case, led to the arrest of 7 more people and the recovery of approximately 3.4 million reais in diverted funds. The hospital underwent a complete overhaul of its administrative processes and drug control systems. In a ceremony held on the first anniversary of the case's resolution in March 2019, the city of Itapevi inaugurated the Carlos and Márcia Memorial, a small garden with 2 ipe trees and a plaque honoring the couple, installed at the main entrance of the hospital. The plaque reads, "In memory of Carlos Eduardo Ferreira and Márcia Oliveira Ferreira, whose sacrifice brought light to the darkness and whose search for justice continues to inspire those who fight against corruption." Rosana, Carlos's sister, established the Carlos and Márcia Foundation, dedicated to helping search for missing persons and lobbying for improvements in investigative protocols. "If they had searched properly back then, my brother and sister-in-law would have been found much sooner and justice would have come earlier," she declared at the foundation's inauguration. "No family should have to go 11 years without answers." The Carlos and Márcia case, as it came to be known, prompted significant changes in missing persons investigation procedures in the state of São Paulo. A state law passed in 2020 established stricter guidelines for immediate searches, especially in rural and hard-to-access areas near where a person was last seen. For Rosanna, despite the pain of her loss, there is some comfort in the case's resolution and in the justice that, however delayed, was finally served. For 11 years, I lived with the hope that one day they would knock on my door telling me everything was okay, she shared in her final interview on the subject. Now I know that won't happen, but at least I know the truth. I can finally say goodbye. If you've watched this far, it's because you care about these cases that scar families forever. Please leave a comment saying, "I watched until the end," so I can know who you are and who truly cares about the search for truth. Don't forget to like this video and share it, so more people can learn this story and reflect on the importance of never giving up on the truth, no matter how long it takes to come to light.